it's George Lees again. I've had another really shocking day. You must be getting used to that now. It is really appalling how the world is run and how it is laughed at. And what I'm going to show you is that it's laughed at by the Dad's Army team all about the jokes that even decrepit old pensioners in World War II being prepared to laugh at the previous culls over 5 or 6 centuries of the pagan nations that include the Indian nations. My voice is very fragile, but I'm going to get this truth out because it's a long, complicated video, and if I study much more, I'm going to be choked with information and I'm not going to be able to reveal it to you. Some of it I will stop halfway through. You can read the rest for yourselves. Okay? You can see that joke that I forgot the other day about the Cree Nation and the Tonto joke about it being a fool. Okay, and let me now take you to the Dad's Army joke that keeps recurring. Butcher Jones is involved in the killing of American Indians in Butcher Jones Park in Arizona, and today I'm going to reveal the sick little joke that they make about Godfrey and his sisters in the same genocides, thousands and thousands of miles from their homeland. Okay, and the culprit in the Dad's Army movie is Hitler, and he was of course trained in Tavistock in Britain and then in Liverpool in Britain. Okay, so let me take you forward to the Dad's Army theme music. And the focus here is on the elderly person that is Godfrey in the cast. He's not in any of those images, but what I'm going to show you now is the Battle of Godfrey's Cottage. Yeah, they end up shooting at themselves, which is the buffoonery about this man Mainwaring, who's an executive at the HSBC, if you don't know that already. Okay, it's all a massive stitch up. And it is really inhumane to laugh at all of the dead and all of the races that God planted on our world. And when you see the sickening ads for the Tiguan, it's about the Indian tribes that are no longer with us, nor their horses, nor their capacity to get around the vast tracts of land and the prairies that they used to own. And the Tiguan is one of the tribes, with the Christian cross at the beginning of it for a laugh. Let me show you what they're prepared to do. This is World War II, by the way. So, that was achieved within 9 months of the declaration of war by the stammering king, because the stammering king is on the same side as these and these, and he lives here, which is immune from bombing, right next to Oxfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Buckinghamshire. And St Paul's in London is totally unscathed, because that is now the Prince Charles's girls' school run by Christopher Chambers, and the Chambers joke is too sick to explain in this narrative about the American Indians. But that's what we had within 9 months of the war beginning, and the buffoons in Godfrey's Cottage look after us while Winston Churchill, Beaverbrook and all of the Kruppses in Germany and all of the munitions companies way out west in America make the planes, the boats and the battleships and the massive tanks and the armory that we use to brutalise. All of this when they turn things around in the last 9 months of the war. Yeah, that's the Normandy operation, and into Germany they go with no opposition. And if you become opposition because you're a loyalist in any of those armies, then they top you so they can keep the profits and keep the whole thing strictly secret. The Bletchley Code is nothing compared to the religious code that I'm going to reveal for you, and the ballistic winds that we've been getting all day tell me that we're going to have a really stormy night when this news comes out. Okay, let me introduce you to Godfrey and his sisters. There's Mainwaring, the banking magnate. Yeah, this is the cover for the banking magnate, and it's John Mainwaring Robertson, I think. Yeah, that's the black man joke in wartime and peacetime. And there they are, getting into Godfrey's cottage, because he's in a very strategic point at the end of Brighton Pier. Yeah, where the police wear the helmets and John Patterson is an activist. Right then, there's Godfrey's sisters. So let's just start it with the run up to the military men getting ready to defend Britain bravely from this place right on the Channel coast. And Dunkirk is up here somewhere, and the Dutch armies, who are also fascists, just roll over and die like the French, which is why they got there in only 9 months. And the hole in the Maginot Line is in BREE, where it's right next door to Waterloo. And I'm going to show you what else is right next door to Waterloo in America in the ensuing jokes about the culling of the native Indians. Right then, so this is Butcher Jones, by the way.
Are you enjoying your nice piece of haddock, Charles?
Yes, thank you, darling.
Do you know, I had to queue up for 20 minutes this morning just for that little bit of fish.
Aren't you parading with the yeomanry tonight, Charles?
It's my night for the clinic.
Oh, I see you are. Well, you better hurry up or you'll be late for the parade.
Now, don't rush him, Sissy. I'm sure he's time for another cup of tea and a piece of my upside-down cake.
Oh, that reminds me. Have a nice little word with that nice Mr. Walker tonight, will you, Charles? We need some more sugar.
I'm not going on parade tonight.
Oh, thank you, dear. I'm sure he'll get it for you.
Oh, what is it, Percy? Do you want your tea? What about a little bit of my upside-down cake? Here.
So, ever so innocent until you suss it out. Yeah, Butcher Jones is involved in the American Indian genocide at Butcher Jones Park in Arizona, right underneath the FDR Dam. Yeah, and that is the launch of the gods being subsidiarized and set aside by the human world leaders. Yeah, because they no longer then can control the trends along the whole of those massive river valleys. Okay, let's now take you into the massacre lists. And it is tragic that you must not mistake this, the Indian massacres, not to be confused with massacres in India. If we have time, I will take you to Amristar, to Goa, and all of the places that I have visited. Now I understand entirely that my life is supposed to be dedicated to the exposures of everywhere that I've been being crime centres and genocidal places. Goa is lovely and there is no blood left on the beach. You should see the statistics on Amristar. Yeah, they pretend now it was the British police that did it and not those tanks that they made in the movie about Amristar. with the people who were the assassins in the De Gaulle film, yeah, in Paris, yeah, all of it they're ashamed of now, and they think it's really easy to laugh at when the people are illiterate. But when we have global communication and I'm able to talk to and explain this to everybody I meet and all of them understand it, then it becomes really embarrassing if you're a politician or a profiteer in the banking sector like man-wearing Robertson. Okay, it's really ever so difficult to explain, which is why 2 of my MPs failed in the recent election, and our new MP is running his businesses out of either Peebles, where he's registered as a businessman, or out of Moorbattle, which is just 5 miles up the road. Yeah, and the Moorbattle name is a telling indictment about how the world is run. Nobody ever gets a life in decency and prosperity. Okay, so I'm still being bugged on the Wounded Knee, and one finds links to my lifetime in the Underhill and Hutchison linkages. Those are my neighbours. The Underhill people are the Underhills, who are the double name or the cover name for Frodo in the Lord of the Rings film, but he forgets that when he's in the pub at BREE near the Maginot line. And I played rugby with Underhills, and they live in Hexham, but I played rugby with them at THames Poly, right next door to Woolwich, where Intel now steals from the people and all of their information in their own living rooms. Okay, it's a long list and can be mistaken for massacres in empire on the Asian Indians. At the bottom there is a list that takes us to Blair, Bush et al. And the Peace Prize winners. Okay, so we'll show you the massacres in India if we have time. I will, as normal, show you the tabs I'm going to take you through, so I need to put my camera down. Okay, so this is about the American genocides of the people that owned America before the Brits showed up, and that will, I'll launch the whole story with the launch of Columbus's fleets. Yeah, the names of the ships are the giveaway to the fact that this is just a replay of the religious fraud in the massive American continent and in Canada. Okay, I'll talk about things like local issues called Crown Point. One of my family friends who used to take the mickey out of me because he's a very sophisticated doctor, yeah, the friend of my dad, and he lives at a place called Crown Point, which was the resident for the only Jews in my region before I discovered the other ones. Okay, and what we've got are links to the Crow Indians and that sick joke that I've already shown you on my Gmail page about the Crow Nation, and about the massive links of the Creek being a joke in linguistics, and tonto means fool in Spanish. Okay, and so the Columbus launch is really interesting because it takes you into the ABBA jokes about religion. It takes you into all of the timelines for the takeover in America and how much far behind the Europeans were from the Mediterranean region compared to Eric the Red and the Scandinavian pirates that went there first. Okay, but the Indians own it for thousands of years before that. And what we've got in the massacre lists are, some of them take you right back to 1314, yeah, which is the same year for the battle at where was it, where the Stuarts were revolting against the incumbent kings from England. I think that was Culloden. Yeah, I'll explain all of that to you in due course. And we've got, of course, an explanation for the Godfrey joke. Yeah, that's about Miami and the total fraud that is the naming of Miami on the south coast after the Miami Indians have been officially rendered bankrupt and homeless, and only, even in 2011, there are only 3,000 Miami Indians left alive on the globe. It's a tragedy, and this is about local references to people who were involved as double agents and mercenaries and revolutionaries, but they are actually Scottish and Irish settlers who take up residence in the lands that the tribes used to own, and then they get a little bit bolshy and revolutionary and they start a sectarian divide. And I'm really friendly with the Paxton boys, and I'm quite stunned that every one of them still has a massive head of hair, because what they've done is to defame the people that used to be accused of scalping people. And the Paxton boys' sisters become the provost in my hometown, and all of them are really decent, and I was in their gang when I was younger. Yeah, and everything that happens in my life I now understand is part of the global story about globalism and the killing and murderous acts that mean that the whole world is rendered chaotic. And every one of these horrible facts, through all of the lifetime of all of the media men across our globe, all they do is to try and cover up what happened in the past, because it's evil and sad and genocidal, and it means that nobody in democracy has any access to any funding for democracy anymore. And then you've got a mention of an elite car company which is part of the Paxton boys jokes. Okay, so where shall we start? I think I'll start with the Columbus launch, because that officially is when America was discovered. But you should see what the Indians used to do before we were able to publish the news. And the Fox tribes are really vicious. That's the Fox News tribes. Okay, so the Columbus story is quite sick as usual, because the three ships are the Santa Maria, the Mother of God joke, again and again and again. I'm not sure. Oh, we need to scan to the top. Some of it is really quite amusing if it does not involve the killing of people. Okay, so this is the Christopher Columbus timeline, and the Norse sing about it, and the drums that now beat globally, that is the Abba and Fernando Christopher. Yeah, Christopher Columbus died of consumption. Now that is funny, because consumption is one of the places that he discovered. The ships were the Santa Maria, the Nina, and it does not say that there, but further down we'll discover that it was called the PINTO. Yeah, that's about the milk, yeah, and the colostrum, and about the shepherds and the lambs of God. Okay, so Santa Maria, the baby Jesus, the El Nino scandal, which is now Bill Clinton's profiteering money stream. Okay, and the timeline takes us right back to the date of birth in 1451 of Christopher Columbus. Yeah, the Columbia part of the world ownership fraud. So you've got Columbia, which is the Empire State in America. You've got the City of Rome and the City of London, and that is the triumvirate that's allowed to run the world. Okay, and the Christoph joke is just a joke about the fictitious Christ. And thank you to all of the people who are now beginning to understand that. And everywhere you go, you get confirmation that in the Aryan and the Rossa jokes that you get about everything being part of the master race joke and the Aryan vision, and that is because Religious Piso wrote the falsified Bible. Okay? Born in Genoa, where George W. Bush and all of the world leaders met in the last summit before they brought down the Twin Towers, and they blame that on Islam, which is explained in every one of the recent videos I have made. Yeah? And you've got the involvement of the Moors, yeah, and the launches of attacks on them. You should see the gusts that statements like that engender outside. Yeah, it is just been quite a turbulent day, but the skies are blue because the gods know that the truth is coming out after all of these centuries. So, what else can I show you? I don't think I had time to highlight this. Oh, a little bit. Columbus submits his plan in 1487 to King Henry VII of England. Yeah, I think that is the cry God for Harry joke, and that is the people that became the Plantagenets, and they used the broom for their icon for their kingdom, and the broom, if you remember, was burnt at John F. Kennedy's funeral in 1963, which comes into the story again later on. And King Charles VIII of France, but again his proposals and his funding requests are declined. Christopher and Donna Beatrice Enriquez have a son called Ferdinand, 1488 to 1539, died relatively young, better known as Fernando, and that gets the ABBA drum beating. Listen to the lyrics of the song about following the drum all around the world, and that's from the Norway region where the Vikings discovered America, or probably the Danes, I believe. Okay, Columbus again appeals in 1491 to King Ferdinand of Spain, yeah, and for patronage, but he was again refused. Christopher and Donna Beatriz Enriquez have a son called Ferdinand. Oh, we've done that. Fernando. In 1492, in August, he leaves Palos, the pale face jokes, yeah, and Spain in search of the Indies on his ship, which is called the Santa Maria. Maria, you've got to see her. It's all a myth. There never is a Maria. There never is a Joseph other than in the beautiful songs that the women sing out of Hollywood about Joseph and his coat of many colours, and it's the same in the vaudeville sector in London. His son, Fernando, accompanied Columbus. The other two ships were called the PINTO and the Nina, and I now know why they laugh at the song by Britney Spears about the man in the green, red and yellow uniform with the pointy crown on being picked to be her protector in the mithril shirt and pouring the pint of milk over himself. Yeah, it's all now becomes obvious to me. So the ships were called the Santa Maria, the Pinta and the Nina. That's the El Nino joke. The colostrum, the milk for the Lamb of God from the shepherd, and Santa Maria, the Mother of God. Yeah? And what you've got below that is Martin Alonso Pinzon. The word pie comes up all through the story. Okay? The pin board, yeah, in the story about the usual suspects and the police turning Queen's evidence and all that shit. Yeah? And what you've got is commanded the Pinta with a P-I at the beginning of it and the further Vincent Yanez Pinzon, yeah, commanded the Ninho, which is the baby Jesus, El Nino joke, and I've told you that umpteen times, and this is the equivalent for the Go West fleet of the Magellan fleet that went east into the South Pacific and traded the El Nino dollies for all of the pearls and all of the gold, and the genocide by giving them infections out of the blankets that you've got on your ship is particularly effective in these culls. The 3 ships carried 120 men, so that's the launch of Christianity into America. And the Vikings were decent enough to stay pagan for a long time, even beyond that. September the 8th, the voyages of Christopher Columbus on the Santa Maria, the Ninho and the Pinto begin. September the 15th, the ships reach the Canary Islands under favourable conditions. That's the Canaries, where they sit on Pope Pius XII's shoulder, because they use it also to launder the Nazis after World War II. Yeah, it's quite gusty out there. And Father Perez intercedes on behalf of Perez. I'm not sure why I highlighted that, because the Perezes are the people that run the art galleries in Spain and Latin America, and are the presidents and prime ministers in Israel. Yet they never get a life compared to the European elites, and they have to dedicate themselves to politics in a very turbulent part of the world, which is why it's called the Holy Lands. September the 20th, 1492, at the Saragossa Sea, that's the Triangle of Death or whatever they call it, where all the ships and the aeroplanes disappear, yeah, the weather conditions change, yeah, because they're getting next to virgin territory where the indigenous people still thrive. Columbus keeps 2 logbooks to deceive the crew as to the real length of the voyage. Global leadership explored. October the 7th, false landfall is spotted. The crew become disgruntled. October 11th, there is near mutiny from the crew. October 12th, land seen by one of the Pinto's crew. They land on Watling's Island. I have not sussed that joke out yet, but I will in the next 2 or 3 days. In the Bahamas, West Indies. So this is the pirates of the Caribbean joke. The discoverers name the island San Salvador, and Columbus believes that he has reached the passage to India and China. And that is the launch of the official news and analysis. Okay, St. Salvador, and that means of gold. Yeah, the motives are clear everywhere they go. Another set of genocides on his horizon, but in reality he is lost. Yeah, so that is India and China, right next door to the Bahamas, but he's lost. Yeah, but with loads of, yeah, and that means that they become the owners of the world. December the 5th, God has a humour. The Santa Maria sinks off the coast of Hispaniola. When I went to Jimmy Savile's place, I forget what the name of the holiday village is, that had the cliffs collapse onto the beach. The Hispaniola is the name of the sailing ship that you get onto and you pay to go around the lake, and they've got a TT course around that. The TT is the name of the elite motorbiking races that take place in the tax haven of the Isle of Man. And by now you understand the TT joke is really sick as well. That is the 2 Christian crosses side by side. But Christopher Columbus has established the first Spanish settlement in the New World. It's actually in the Caribbean. Yeah, he's a little bit short of his target, but no, the truth does not matter at all in world history until your relatives are dead and you have to go and mourn for them thousands of miles from home. The third voyage of Christopher Columbus from Seville, Spain, with 6 ships, 1498, and that, if you look at it closely, is the launch of Saville. Yeah, and it's the launch of all of those frauds. I forget the name of the holiday resort in North Yorkshire with the cliff that keeps caving onto the beach. Yeah, Saville is part of the sexual cover-ups for all of the massive financial and theological jokes, and all of them become massive money streams, and all of them then become the massive banks and the financial institutions that laugh at the Piso jokes, the codes about the pie, and everywhere they go the religion is a well kept secret, but it's coming out now. And we've got visits to the Cape Verde Islands by the same team near Trinidad, and the Verde project is where the co-op funds headed west since 1498. So the Lloyd's Verde project was to asset strip the whole of the co-op bank's funding base, and that is where Peter Marx was the principal thief. All of that is published on my website, and I have receipts from the co-op bank for the massive fraud, but no one in the company or in the regulatory sector are prepared to do anything about it. Christopher Columbus was the first European to land in South America. Yeah, that's not true, but news spreads to Spain about problems in the Spanish settlements, and Christopher Columbus is heavily criticised for its handling. Now wait for this. A visitor was ordered to investigate the lead by Francisca de Bobadilla. So, do you get it? That is the launch of the visa, and that's required so that the whole world can become a globalised fraud with no taxes being returned to any responsible government. And it's also the launch of the Tom Bombadil joke, who lives on the edge of hell, which is in the Lord of the Rings movies, the Hayes End joke. The World's End pub in Edinburgh is in the Royal Mile, right near the Arnott Manderson frauds, the law enforcement frauds, and the Church of St Giles, where they celebrate all of the massacres of all of the troops in the kilts, which is the Scottish equivalent of all of the German and Austrian troops in the lederhosen. Yeah, and the man Hawk or Hawkeye or Hawkins, or even the innocent girl Hawkins, who talks on Eamon's news bulletins in the morning for Sky News, are part of the same joke. Yeah, about globalised, the world takeover for profit by the tyrants who are totally detached from democracy, other than they pick the people for their sins. And my new MP is called Callum Kerr, and I've got minor sins for him already, even under his real name. Okay, 1500 Francisca de Bobadilla. Yeah, so can you see it? Tom Bombadil lives on the edge of the forest. Yeah, and there we've got the whole of the launch of the Go West and Save the World concept. It's all a vicious profiteering project. Francisco de Bobadilla believes that Columbus and his brothers consider themselves rulers of the new country, and we've got royalty, nobility, and the Spanish people were horrified at these injustices because some of them were chained in irons. Yeah, and all of the privileges were restored to Christopher Columbus, who proposed yet another voyage of discovery. And what we've got from the place that where the cliffs collapse in Yorkshire, it's called Scarborough. Jimmy Savile was a fellow of that town, or an honorary citizen of it. Yeah, and the Cook's vessels were launched from there, and one of them might even have been the Hispaniola. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to now take you to the massacre listings, and when I get to one that's particularly potent, or particularly poignant in the way that they laugh at it, I will take you to another tab. Okay, right then. And the first one is really sick, because it tells you another one of the Time Team stories. Okay, the Crow Creek joke I've just shown you. I forget what it was. We could look at the Gmail again. Let's look at the Gmail again. So Crow Creek, when it's literally the Tonto Cree joke with the K taken off the end is create a fool. Okay, and what you've got here is in Spanish they're asking you to read the words backwards, because Tonto means fool and Cree means create, and the creek joke and the crick is also Jiminy Cricket and the game cricket, equally sinister whichever way you look at them. Right then, let's get down to the bloodshed. Okay, so they're pretending, the Time Teams, and they're pretending that they know everything that happened in 1325 before even the Danish discovered America. And if you look at the 12 people, the 12 nations that are on the European Commission, you'll find that one of them is appended to Latin America, just to the south of the Panama Canal, and that's Denmark, because they were everywhere much earlier than everybody else. And what you've got are the archaeologists telling us that they understand really easily what happened in the Crow Creek massacre in 1325. Okay, 486 known dead near the Chamberlain, South Dakota. Chris Chambers is Prince Charles' financial advisor, who runs the girls' school out of the St Paul's region in London. And what you've got here is an open declaration that in 1325 this is registered as a national historic landmark number 660-00710. So lots of transactions registered before that one. And what you've got is an open declaration that it was an internal Native American eradication. Isn't that funny? And that's 1325, which is right in the Cull Odin joke. Odin is a god, and Cull Odin is a joke about the battle for the Stuarts that led to the bloodshed and all of the redcoats killing all of the kilted soldiers for someone who came as a little poofta in fancy pantyhose from France. That's Freemasonic France. America still undiscovered. And when we get America discovered, the massacres become really regular events. Okay, so here we've got the launch of those adverts about the I forget what the name of the car is, the Tiguans and things. That's not the particular one, it's further down. Okay, but what you've got is a cover for the real name of the American president, Soto. Yeah, after defeating resisting Timucuan warriors, Hernando de Soto had 200 executed in the first large-scale massacre by Europeans on what became American soil, 1539. That's a long time after our mate from Europe discovered it. Yeah, Christopher Columbus. I think he got there in the very late 1490s. And what you've got is a cover for the Sotorro name for President Obama. Right then, let's move down it quickly, because there are hundreds of incidents and all of them have Freemasonic numbers and the religious code numbers in them, and the statistics are totally inaccurate, but the jokes are the telling things. On 1540, October the 18th, we have the Mabilla massacre. The Choctaw retaliated against Hernando de Soto's expedition. Yeah, Sotorro, the name of the president. killing 200 soldiers as well as many of their horses and pigs. Those are the Piso icons. Okay? And the pigs has the word pie in it. Like the word ham, and the hamlets are all over the first and second chapters of the Old Testament. Yeah, and they make the film about Moses, and the man who plays the gladiator is coerced into acting that, and he gets ever so unhealthy looking in just a few months after that. Okay, and we've got killing 200 soldiers, as many of their horses and pigs, for having burned down Mabila compound and killed circa 2,500 warriors who had hidden in houses of a fake village. See Crow Massacre by archaeologists at the top. Now I need to show you that before I forget about it, because what it is a ruthless stitch up, like the Time Team stitch ups. Yeah, so that's the Time Team that laugh at the dead in the trenches. So let's take you to Crow Creek and see how the archaeologists cover something that happened just a few years after the Culloden massacre. Crow Creek. So this is the world of archaeology and its insight. This is a stunning discovery that was published within, this is the telling bit, within 1 year of JFK's killing in 1963. So the story is published in 1964 about the massive abuses of themselves by the indigenous American Indians. You should see how ruthless they are. And the president is cast into the shallow grave with the broom, and his missus then gets involved in the narcotics laundering sector with her next two partners. That's narcotics, oil, then diamonds, when Templesman was her partner and he was working for De Beers when the plane was brought down at Lockerbie, and this information about the crimes at Crow Creek were published several hundred years after, before archaeology was even invented. Okay, so here are the disclosures. We have a National Register of Historic Places, and there's the aerial photo. I tell you all about that all of the time, and there's clues that God gives us about who the world's tyrants are and what they want us to know. Okay, more locally, the Crows, this is about my hometown, I will not take you into that. Oh yes, I will. The Crows ran the fishing tackle trade in my hometown, and he had a finely tuned sense of humour and was a very posh man. They got help from the ordinary working man called Hutchison, and Glass, the orphan and son of a woodcutter. So Glass, the fishing tackle salesman, even today is the son of a woodcutter who sadly died in his profession because of an accident. Do you get the woodcutting joke now? And all of the avenue jokes, all of the shrubbery jokes, all of the knock on wood and touch wood jokes. You see it all of the time at all of the Catholic celebrations. And the people are becoming ever so nervous at the Catholic chapel because the whole of their fraud is coming out, and the lay vicar, or whatever they call him, has a terrible tremor now. And I sat deliberately in the first 2 rows this week amongst the really innocent children, and I talk to their mums all of the time, but the priesthood is really on the verge of a massive nerve attack, and they totally deserve it, because everything that they do is a cover up for international fraud and massacres like I'm describing here. Okay, and the man Glass is now part of the Tweed ownership team as an ordinary working man. None of the ordinary working man has anything to do with the ownership of its own land, its own mountains, or its own rivers in Scotland. I'm going to fix that. Right then, And the Hutchisons are really nice, although they were a bit hard on me when I first arrived back in my hometown, and they won't sign my petitions just yet. The Crow Creek Massacre occurred around 1325 AD, yeah, when all of those Christian colleges are being founded in Cambridge and Oxford and all over educated America, because it's a massive money stream, and if you can manipulate that, then you don't have to worry about the student fees issues and disclosures like that being made against you, because you're already a multi-millionaire, and all of the laundering tools that we learn about then become their massive vents. And that's why the discovery of Bermuda by the Europeans is a really important event in world history. And in Monterey they have Channel Islands too. Okay, 1325 AD, between Indian groups at a site along the Missouri River in the South Dakota area. It is now within the Crow Creek Indian Reservation, which is why I got interested in Sheryl Crow and her breast cancer, but I cannot see any links to indigenous natives in her bloodline, but she's a female. Okay, and the Crow Creek site, the site of the massacre near Chamberlain, is an archaeological site and a US National Historic Landmark. And what the revelations are within 1 year of Kennedy's killing, which has never been solved, they're really insightful, you know. Right then, the survivors of the massacres replace the buffaloes, and they are herded, the surviving Indians, into pens because of the defamation in this way. Okay? And what you've got is the launch of the word cad. The Redskins launch the cad word, then become the caddies for the master race on the golf courses. All the movie soundtracks have explained. Okay, so the archaeologists are from the University of South Dakota, directed by project director Larry J. Zimmerman. All the movie soundtracks explained. The beautiful music on the Pirates of the Caribbean and on the Gladiator movie about freedom, yeah, is made by Zimmerman, Hans Zimmer. And ironically, the Zimmer becomes the vehicle, the Zimmer frame becomes the prop for the people that become the victims of the acts of God that ensue. Okay? Field Director Thomas Emerson and osteologist P. Wiley. The Wileys is one of the massive publishing empires for the science people around the globe. Most of the remains showed signs of ritual mutilation, particularly scalping. Yeah, so they're looking at the bones and what they've dug out of the ground. Other examples, and this one bemuses me a bit, because my mum showed me how to preserve a tongue by salting it on the kitchen shelf. But what you've got here is evidence from tongues that were cut out, yeah, way back in the 14th century. Teeth broken, beheading, hands and feet being cut off, and other forms of dismemberment. And JFK does not get a mention in this story within 9 months of his killing. In addition to the severity of the attack, most of the people showed signs of malnutrition, and many had evidence of being wounded in other attacks when there were only Indians to attack them. So this is something of an emancipation project for the consciences of the whole of the white man and the pale face in America. The pale face. This evidence has suggested to scholars that lives of people of the initial coalescent culture, it's ever so posh and academic, were under more stress than was thought. They have theorized that the people were attacked by another group or several groups of the initial coalescent culture in the area in competition for arable land and resources. Published by, this is ironic because it's the biggest name in American news releases, within 1 year of Kennedy's killing. So Zimmerman writes the music, and Ben Bradley is the editor at the Washington Post. When JFK needs a successor and they choose Nixon, and Ben Bradley then becomes world famous for electoral fraud. Are you getting the magnitude of it? All of it is a really expensive cover-up, and they do not give a shit about the truth. Right then, let's go to the massacre lists again and scan down until we find one that takes us to another one of the tabs. I've only gotten about a third of the way through it this afternoon, and the wind has been gusting into those trees and bending them over till they nearly touch the ground. Right then, and I dare not look closely at the massacres in India, because by then they've got the Gatling gun, and as Jonesy Butcher Jones declared yesterday, the Gatling gun was developed by an American dentist called Gatling, and that is how they bring the people down in huge numbers. In the official transcript that I've looked at on that website for the massacre at Amristar, only 1,000 people died, and it was the police what did it now. And all of that film about the field marshals and the people that did the genocide there, and them being taken home and persecuted for that, yeah, they then cover that up and totally deny all of it. And I visited Goa, and it is tragic. I had no idea that there was a massacre there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and all of the world elites use it as a tax haven, and it's got beautiful beaches, and everybody parties there now. No conscience at all. We need not have any conscience if we were to do the decent thing, and instead of covering it up, we go for policy change that is constructive and sharing and allows the banks to fund our democracies, and everybody then is part of what we call civilization. Right then, so we've done the pigs bit. After the invading Spaniards, so we've got the Tiguex massacre, and this is the Tiguan ad comes up every day when I'm searching it on the internet, and I now realise what it's all about. It's the Tiguex massacre. After the invading Spaniards seized the houses, food and clothing of the Tiguex and raped their women, the Tiguex resisted. The Spanish attacked them, burning at the stake 50 people who had surrendered. Francis Vasquez de Coronada's men laid siege to the Mojo Pueblo, and after a months-long siege they killed 200 fleeing warriors. Now these numbers are all rounded up, and that is the Piso code that they're using. You need to look at my website, Faking the New Testament. The Piso code is a Pythagorean numbering code, and it refers you directly, like Alfred Hitchcock used to appear in his movies, to the characters that are the creators of the New Testament fraud. Okay, so the Tiguan ad is a car ad, and you see it every day covering up these truths, and the cover-ups are really, really massive. So that event, the Tiguex massacre, occurred in 1541 to 42, and they know everything in fine detail, but the numbers get rounded up and rounded down so it looks less horrendous than it actually was. Okay, so this one is the Acoma massacre. In retaliation for the killing of 11 Spanish soldiers, Juan de Onati led a punitive expedition against the natives in a 3-day battle at Acoma Pueblo, killing approximately 800. King Philip III later punished Onate for his excesses. So that's 800 dead to compensate for 11 dead Spaniards. Okay, and what you've got here is the Sandia Mountain joke. So we've talked about the woman Emily Sandy from Aberdeen singing about being persecuted by politicians, but what you've got here is a Spanish troops destroyed 3 Indian villages in the Sandia Mountains, New Mexico. According to Spanish sources, 900 Tompiro Indians were killed. Do you remember the stories about King Arthur killing himself 1,500 people in the Arthurian Wars? All of it is related to the Freemasonic numbering system, but more importantly to the Piso 2,000-year-old religious fraud. So you've got the pigs, Sandy pigs blow it all down joke. So that's the Sandy building your house or your church on sand. Yeah, and if you look closely at the Monty Python's team in the Holy Grail movie, they also refer to 4 attempts to build your castle on the sand. And then you get the 5th column jokes. 900 victims, okay? So that is the tom-tom, which is a weapon for the Indians, and the pyro joke, okay? So the Cairo joke we explained yesterday. Yeah, it's on my website, and what you've got here is a very facile reference to the word pi and the word ro. Cairo is the capital of Egypt, and all of the frauds that cover up the Piso sins all the way up and down the Nile Valley, which was totally owned by England for a huge chunk of its existence, and they've now taken the power away from the gods by building those massive dams all along it. Next date we have is 1622. Powhatan, Pa Monkey, in inverted commas. The monkey and the donkey are jokes about Judaism and the Jewish nation, and also about the donkey is Jesus. Okay, so powwowing is talking to your rivals. Yeah, I want to powwow with you. Powhatan, and you've got links there to the hat jokes, but the Panamanic monkey, or possibly Pakistani monkey, okay, they put the initials in front, yeah, or they put the B ovary stuff in front so that you can decode all of the words, okay? So this is either the Pakistani or the Panamanian monkey. Killed 347 Englishmen and children through the Virginia colony. That's where the tobacco comes from, I'm led to believe. And the Virgin is there because the boat that sailed there is called the Santa Maria. Almost 1/3 of the English population of the Jamestown colony in an effort to push the English out of Virginia. Okay? And the Santa and Satan and James are all a massive joke about the biblical fraud. Do you see it? Santa, the saint, is the same. It's I forget what the word is when you can change the letters and get the same meaning. Can you see that? Santa and Satan are the same joke about the false religious text. This one shares the same joke, and it's the Pamunkey Peace Talks again. May the 12th, 1623. The English poisoned the wine at a peace conference with powwowing with the Hatton leaders. Yeah, so the Satan powwowing, and you're able to tell a story about 200 getting killed, which means something about a fictitious biblical character that was written about thousands of years ago, and they physically attacked and killed another 50. That's exactly the same number that escaped from the prison in the Great Escape movie and were gunned down by the evil Nazis that are on the same profiteering side. 50. Yeah, look it up, listen to Greg Hallett talking about it and explaining it. It's part of the Piso and Freemasonic code. 50 killed, Great Escape. See Abelard, Roykland and Hallett explain this deeply. No whining, take what you're given jokes. This is the powwowing concept. Okay? And I've got friends called Monagans in my hometown, and for a long time they've shared jokes with me about the KKK in America. Used to be good rugby players, and they're very spirited people, and they have a good sense of humour, even when they're pissed. Yeah, and that is lucky for me, because they are now aware of everything I'm reporting, and his sister works for the company where the man Lees is on the board. They've checked my family out for money laundering, and they've got a man called Shaughnessy, yeah, who's interlocks with several companies that have quite a lot to hide, and he bailed out as soon as I began to become a very active political spokesperson for the people across the world who are the victims of the money laundering across the globe. And Miss Monaghan is happily married to a former rugby player, and all of them now come to the church on occasions because they know the power of my campaign, and they know what happens to people who steal from their neighbours and their international neighbours. Okay, there's a pussycat. I don't understand that part of the story yet, apart from the pussies in the religious sector that I explained yesterday. Okay, and what you've got in every one of these tribal names is the Aryan myths. Okay, and what you've got in this particular tab is the Pequot War, English colonists commanded by John Mason. Some irony there that the Masons are involved. Mohegan and other Narragansett set allies launched a night attack on the Pico village. Okay, 1643, the Mohawk tribe. Now they could be double agents because of what I learned from John Fenimore Cooper. Yeah, the Hawkeye character is part of the jokes about Vietnam, part of the jokes about the World Wildlife Fund on Sky News, and also part of the Able Danger story in the chat room. Okay, attacked a band of Wappinger and Tapans who fled to New Amsterdam seeking the protection of New Netherland Governor William Kieft them and dispersed them. He dispersed them, Kieft did, to Pavonia. Yeah, now Pannonia is in the Rothschilds' Ukrainian strongholds, and the sun went down when I published this morning. It's less ballistic this evening, but the involvement of this person is massive, and this person also comes into my life story, which is no surprise to me now. They were later attacked, 129 being killed. This prompted the beginning of Kieft's War involving the Dutchmen. Yeah, and you know the Orange Movement and the sectarian violence that ensued from that, driven by mercenary John Underhill. Now when I played rugby at Thames Poly, there was an Underhill played for me, with me. He was from Hexham, and Underhill in the Lord of the Rings movie is the pseudonym or nickname for the man who was the little hero with the furry feet, and his name was Frodo, which actually is a cover for French Bishop Odo in 1066. And he's part of the Bayeux Tapestry regime. Isn't it funny? Okay, so you've got everything explained that is in the writings of the man Tolkien from the massively rich college that is Merton College, Oxford. So there's another bit reference to Kieft's War in New Netherlands, 1643, Bronx in New York City, local Lenape or C1I killed Anne Hutchison, 6 of her children, a son-in-law, and as many as 7 other servants. A bit like the Lord Lucan story in a way. Susanna, one of Hutchison's daughters, was taken captive and lived with the Native American Indians for several years. And I apologise to my neighbours because I thought when I was making this up that they were the that they were the perpetrators of one of the massacres, but they were actually the victims. Maybe now they'll sign my petition as a pacifist. No, it's getting quite gusty out there now. Right then, And that's all of my neighbours that are allowed to surveil me, but want me to cut the very threatening branches off my trees out there. Yeah, we've got coppers from Birmingham, we've got people from all over Scotland. Yeah, some of them are involved in journalism, some of them are involved in the administration of rugby, and all of it is really, really sick. But they now know that I'm much more powerful than any of the leaders in the UK or any of the leaders across the world, because they are dedicated to trivialising everything they do to steal from their people. Right then, 1644, part of Keep's War, John Underhill, hired by the Dutch, attacked and burned a sleeping village of Lenape, killing about 500 Indians. And that is Lenape, which translates to Nepal, which is in the news at the moment, if you might have noticed that, and Naples, yeah, which is where the Pisos wrote the fake up. Aren't they clever? But there are people now who are cleverer than them, and they're having to concede that, and all that they're doing now is a massive spend on massive trivia and massive cover-ups, even about the decent people I meet in the street and talk to them openly about such things, and they find it easy to understand. Yeah, so that's Nepal, Naples, front page story. Yeah, the Naples is where the New Testament was written by the Pisos, and when it was published in 79 AD, Vesuvius fucking exploded on it, and that is the jokes about Pompeii and Up Pompeii by Frankie Howard in the 1960s, when we were much less careful about letting the truth out about the world ownership. Then we get into the British American tobacco sector. 1655, Peachtree Wars. In retaliation for Director General of New Netherlands Peter Stuyvesant's attacks. Do you remember the Stuyvesant cigars in the beautiful boxes? I used to smoke them when I was pissed, and it made me terribly sick, and I've never had a fag or a cigar ever since. Yeah. And the attacks to their trading partners and allies at New Sweden. That's where Queen Sylvia is a relevant person. Yeah, and Sylvia is a family friend of mine, and she loves heroic people because she's named her coffee house after a heroic person in the town of Galashiels, where Michael Moore was a major criminal for some years. Pavonia, Staten Island, Colendonk and other areas of New Netherlands. The Dutch are also part of the fascist regime. That's the Royal Dutch Shell regimes and the Philips light tubes out of Holland that took the narcotics into the South Pacific. And what you've got there with the links to the Peter Stuyvesant is the declaration that I now understand. The balm sticks now in Dutch tins. Yeah, British American tobacco sticks now in Dutch tins. Okay, and that is Winston Churchill and Beaverbrook's speciality, and it's also on its directors now has the Du Plessis, the criminals in South Africa. During King Philip's War, Indian warriors killed 60 soldiers, so that must be the religious code again, because it's relatively small. 1675, Bloody Brook Massacre. Wherever the Brook name appears, it takes you back to Austria and Hitler's birthplace, and eventually no room at the inn for the baby Jesus. Right. 1675, the Great Swamp Massacre. Colonial militia attack a Nara Aryan Gansett, 2 Christian T's on the end, fort near South Kingston, Rhode Island. Yeah, further down we get the exposure on the pork, the chickens and the eggs story, but here at least 40 warriors were killed and 300 women. That's the Jesus number in the Piso coding system. Children and elders were burnt in the village. and there's the declaration that that is the Rhode Island red-skinned chicks. Do you get it? The chicks, the purrs, the Calpurnius Piso jokes, the chicken and the egg, and all the king's soldiers and all the king's men cannot put Humpty together again. Nine men misery. Some of it is just Freemasonic numbers, and it's as simple as that. Turner's Falls. So we told you about how the falls appear as God's reaction to human evil, and how you get massive cataracts all the way along the rivers that they used to control before they were dammed. Okay, and the fish is the penis in the biblical story, and all of that comes into the story about Butcher Jones's camp in Arizona. This one's got big numbers, and it's got the Mohawk name again. 1,500 Mohawk warriors attacked the small settlement of Lachine, New France, and killed more than 90 of the village's 375 residents. So this is sectarian now. They're picking out the frogs. Yeah, following widespread French attacks on Mohawk villages in present-day New York. I don't know whether that means present-day New York in 1689 or present-day New York when this Wikipedia article was updated, but what you've got is, in French, La Chine means China. Okay, and that is the Shakira, Sheena joke about China and the Jewish angel called Shekinah. Yeah, and it's ever so funny if you're an elite clergyman that has got your massive money stream in Bermuda. Yeah, and that is the River Runs Through It film about the people called MacLean, like the people who wrote the music to that inspiring music about the last of the Mohicans. Okay, the MacLean vicar in that movie was a Presbyterian, and he's very severe with his own children. Yeah, but they're able to take over world ownership by a series of very sophisticated frauds. Okay, let me explain the La Chine joke a little bit further. That's La Chine in French. Ever so artistic in their criminal tendencies. They picked off. Okay, so that's the Rhode Island Redskins declarations. It hits you right on the chinook. Also a Jewish angel, but this is a coincidence. Okay, and China, they picked off the French from the innocents, but I was ooh la la'd when I saw these stats. This is on the new French movement in America. Nouvelle France was the area colonized by France in North America during a period beginning with the exploration of St. Lawrence River by Jacques Cartier, who makes Swiss watches now, in 1534, and ending with the cession of the New France to Spain and Great Britain in 1763. At its peak in 1712, before the Treaty of Utrecht, the territory of New France, also sometimes known as the French North American Empire or Royal New France, extended from Newfoundland to the Rocky Mountains and from Hudson Bay to the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, and the Indians did that terrible thing in 1325. Yeah, terrible thing by putting, their axes through some of their neighbours' heads. Yeah, and that all of that is highly accurate because it comes from the archaeology world, like the fucking Time Team, sponsored by Kellogg's and Walt Disney. Right then, what else have we got? Oh, the Beaver Wars are vicious, and the Beaver Wars is also a joke about the wood and the Christian cross. Yeah. And as part of the Beaver Wars, French and Algonquins, Gonks, do you get it? Algonquins destroyed, and the Gonks are part of the Gonculator joke, and that is part of the Hogan's Heroes merchandising fraud, shared entirely by my brother-in-law, who carries the Gonks around in his suitcases as he goes to massive trade fairs to steal from dental students all around the world. And he started life much poorer than me and my family. He's got a massive £700,000 mansion in the Cotswolds now, right next door to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister and him are engaged in persecuting me, even although I compliment that Prime Minister all of the time for being less criminal in war crimes and genocides like these than any one of our previous leaders. Yeah, I just hope that they will back off, because I fear what might become of them when the gods have their way with them, which always happens in the end. Schenectady, New York, killing 60 Dutch and English settlers, including 10 women and at least 12 children. When you add the numbers up, it does not mean anything to a simple man like me, but when you read Abelard Reuchlin's numbering scheme again, it does make sense, even for me. During King William's War, this is 1692 now, Candlemas massacre, 2 to 300 Abenaki, so that is the Ashkenazi, twist the words around a bit and then accuse somebody else of something evil, and then you can get away with the genocides and cover up the real statistics about how many Jews died in World War II. Yeah, and that is the Ashkenazi Jews that are now alleged to be the world owners. And Noam Chomsky, my mate, the world's leading false socialist, who works for the world's leading millionaire in the recruit the false socialist sector, Arianna Huffington, her name means spider, and that is the massive globalised fraud. And everybody that's poor and communist or socialist gets culled in the end by the Ashkenazi Jews. Then we've killed in this little incident in Candlemas, 75 took 100 prisoner and burned the towns of York, where the Freemasons are, and I think that was a major stronghold for Longshanks, the main district of the province of Massachusetts Bay, which I think was the Boston Tea Party. That's the Christian cross, 3 of them lined up. Everybody has got 9 nails in their arms and feet, and the translation of feet is pie, and that takes you back to the Piso joke and the word pie and all of the Oscars and all of the songs that are launched to cover them up.